Catherine Prescott had just had what she considered a brilliant idea. She would invite her housekeeper to her gala. 200 guests dripping in diamonds, and this creature in a stained kitchen rag. The women around her burst out laughing. "You hear that, girl? You're coming to my birthday." Catherine turned to Monica, her eyes cold with contempt. "Wear something nice." "Oh, wait. People like you don't own anything nice." "I'll be right there, ma'am." Catherine snatched the filthy dish rag off the counter and hurled it at Monica's chest. "This is your dress. Let my guests see what real charity looks like." Monica caught the rag before it hit the floor. Quietly, she folded it. But Catherine Prescott had no idea her 50th birthday would be the last celebration she'd ever throw. Have you ever watched a queen rise from the ashes of her own humiliation? Because you're about to. So settle in, and let me take you back to where it all began. A house run like a prison. Monica Adams had spent nearly 2 months scrubbing floors in the Prescott mansion. Every morning she woke at 4:30 in a windowless room tucked beneath the basement stairs. A narrow cot, a wooden stool, a bare bulb that flickered whenever the heat kicked on. The air smelled of old paint and mildew. This was where Catherine Prescott kept her staff. Upstairs was an entirely different world. Crystal chandeliers in every room, Italian marble running through every hallway. Fresh orchids delivered Mondays and Thursdays by a florist who charged more per bouquet than Monica earned in a week. Catherine ran the household the way a warden runs a cell block. She never used names, only "you," "girl," or a snap of manicured fingers followed by a look that said you'd better already know what she wanted. Orders came over breakfast without her ever glancing up from her phone. The toast was too cold, the coffee too weak. The dress needed pressing again. There was a crease in the left sleeve. And if the work didn't meet her standard, she never raised her voice. She just stared, and the silence was worse than any shouting. Monica did everything herself. She pressed the dresses. She polished the silver until it threw back her own reflection. She scrubbed bathrooms on her knees because Catherine insisted mops left streaks. And every time Catherine addressed her, she answered the same way. "Yes, ma'am." To anyone watching, Monica was the perfect maid. Quiet, obedient, invisible. She moved through the house like a shadow, always 2 steps behind Catherine, always 1 step ahead of the next task. She never complained. She never hesitated. She never gave Catherine a single reason to look at her twice. But Monica Adams was none of those things. In her real life, the one Catherine Prescott knew nothing about, Monica was deputy editor-in-chief of one of the most powerful newspapers in America. 2 Pulitzer Prizes sat on her office shelf. She had brought down a pharmaceutical company, exposed a corrupt police union, and forced the resignation of a sitting congressman. Her face had been on magazine covers. Her name carried weight in newsrooms across the country. The assignment. 2 months earlier, her paper had received a tip. A network of wealthy Manhattan families was running a domestic trafficking ring disguised as a private staffing agency. Women of color, mostly black, were recruited with promises of fair pay and legal work. Instead, their passports were confiscated, their wages stolen, their freedom stripped away. The operation ran in plain sight, tucked behind charity galas and social dinners. And at the center of it, according to the source, was one name: Catherine Prescott. Monica volunteered for the assignment. She cut her hair, packed a single bag, and showed up at the Prescott estate with a fake resume and a hidden camera no bigger than a button sewn into her uniform collar. For nearly 8 weeks, she documented everything. Every conversation, every transaction, every locked door, every confiscated phone. 2 other women worked in the house. Ruth, 53, who hadn't spoken to her family in over a year because Catherine had taken her phone on day 2, and Diane, 26, who flinched every time a door slammed because she'd learned exactly what happened to women who complained. Monica watched them. She recorded what she saw, and she said nothing because the story wasn't ready yet. Catherine's husband, Harold Prescott, drifted through the house like a ghost in expensive loafers. Monica was certain he knew. She'd seen him sign checks to the staffing agency. She'd heard him on the phone negotiating placement fees for new girls. Harold never raised his voice. He never touched anyone. He simply looked the other way and counted his money. The household ran on fear and silence. Catherine supplied the fear. Harold supplied the silence. Everyone else simply survived. Monica had been surviving for 56 days. 56 days of yes ma'am and swallowed rage, with a camera that never stopped recording. And now Catherine had invited her to the gala. The folder. It happened on a Tuesday afternoon. Catherine had left for a lunch meeting downtown. Harold was at his club. The house was quiet except for the hum of the air conditioning and the soft clink of Ruth washing dishes in the kitchen. Monica had been assigned to dust Catherine's private study, a room she'd entered only twice before, both times under close supervision. But today the door was unlocked. Catherine had left in a hurry, her Hermes bag already in the car, and had come back only for her sunglasses without relocking the door behind her. Monica stepped inside. The room smelled of leather and tobacco. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves lined 3 walls. A mahogany desk sat at the center, polished to a mirror shine. Above it hung a portrait of Catherine in a white gown, arms crossed, chin raised, looking down as though the viewer owed her something. Beneath the painting hung a row of charity board awards. The irony was thick enough to choke on. Monica began dusting the shelves, moving slowly and methodically, the way she always did when she was actually scanning the room. Her camera caught everything: the titles on the spines, framed photos of Catherine with senators and socialites, a small bronze horse statue, a crystal paperweight, a leather-bound guest book from a fundraiser called An Evening for Human Dignity. Catherine had signed the first page in gold ink. Monica turned the book over in her hands. Human dignity. She thought of Ruth scrubbing a bathroom floor at midnight because Catherine had decided the grout wasn't wide enough. She thought of Diane eating cold leftovers standing up in the pantry. Catherine didn't allow staff to sit at any table in the house. Human dignity. The words meant nothing in this room. She set the book back exactly where she'd found it. Then she moved toward the desk and saw it. A manila folder sat open on the desk, not hidden, not locked away, as if Catherine had been reviewing it right before she left. Monica glanced at the door, listened. Silence. She stepped closer. Inside was a spreadsheet, 40 names, all women, all black. Beside each name, a dollar figure. Some marked placed, others pending. A few carried red X's with notes reading returned or relocated. One name had been crossed out entirely, with a single word written in Catherine's own hand. Disposed. Monica's hands didn't shake. She'd seen worse in her career. Autopsy reports, wiretap transcripts, victim statements that kept her up for weeks. But seeing those names reduced to dollar signs on a spreadsheet turned her stomach. The folder sat between a crystal paperweight and a photo of Catherine at a charity gala. The contrast was obscene. She photographed every page, front and back. 12 buyer families, with addresses in Greenwich, the Hamptons, Westchester, and 3 spots in Manhattan. Fees ranged from $15,000 to $40,000 per woman. Catherine's cut was tracked in a separate column. The total at the bottom of the last page, $1.4 million. 14 months of selling human beings, logged in tidy columns like inventory. One entry near the bottom caught her eye. Grace Williams, age 24. Beside her name, placed, Greenwich, fee $32,000. Below that, in red ink, non-compliant, relocated. No follow-up entry, no forwarding address, just a blank space where a person used to be. Monica closed the folder, returned it exactly as she'd found it, and lined its edges up with the corner of the desk pad. She went back to dusting. Her hands stayed steady. Her breathing stayed even. But something behind her eyes had shifted. This was no longer a story about stolen wages and confiscated phones. This was federal trafficking. and the woman running it was upstairs, choosing between two shades of ivory for her birthday tablecloths. That evening, Catherine came home in a foul mood. She'd argued with her interior designer over the height of the centerpieces. She threw her coat on the floor and, without even looking at Monica, ordered her to hang it up and bring sparkling water. Cold, not room temperature like last time. Monica picked up the coat, hung it in the hall closet, smoothed the collar exactly the way Catherine liked. She brought the water on a silver tray, the glass beaded with condensation, a lemon wedge on the rim. Catherine took one sip and set it down. "There's too much lemon." She shoved the glass to the edge of the counter. It tipped and shattered on the marble floor, water and glass scattering across the tile. "Clean it up." Monica knelt and picked up the shards one by one with her bare hands. A sliver sliced into her index finger. Blood welled up bright red against the white marble. Catherine watched her bleed without offering a towel or a word of warning, the way someone watches a dog perform a trick. Then Catherine froze and turned slowly, eyes narrowing. "Were you in my study today?" "Yes, ma'am. I dusted the shelves like you asked last week." "I didn't ask you to dust this week." "I'm sorry, ma'am. I thought the schedule—" "You thought?" Catherine stepped closer, her perfume sharp and suffocating. "You don't think in this house. You do what you're told and nothing more. That room is mine, my desk, my books, my air. You don't breathe in there unless I say so." "Yes, ma'am." "What did you touch?" "Nothing, ma'am, just the shelves." "Did you touch the desk?" "No, ma'am." Catherine's eyes dropped to Monica's hands, to the blood on her finger, to the damp cloth she held. She studied Monica's face the way a predator studies movement in tall grass, hunting for a flinch, a tell, anything. "Look at me." Monica raised her eyes. Catherine stared for a long moment. The hallway was silent except for water still dripping off the counter. Then Catherine raised her hand and slapped her across the face. The sound cracked through the hallway like a gunshot. Monica's head snapped sideways, her cheek burning, the taste of copper in her mouth. The cut on her finger split open again against the marble. "If I find out you touched anything in that room," Catherine whispered, "you'll disappear, just like the ones before you. Do you understand me?" "Yes, ma'am." Catherine grabbed her jaw and jerked her head up, nails digging into her skin. "Say it again. Louder." "Yes, ma'am." Catherine let go and wiped her hand on her skirt, as if she'd touched something unclean. Then she reached into Monica's apron pocket and pulled out her phone, the burner she carried for show. "Who have you been calling?" "No one, ma'am. I don't have anyone to call." Catherine dropped the phone on the marble and crushed it under her heel, the screen cracking, the casing splitting, pieces scattering across the wet tile. No phone, no calls, no messages. Starting now, your door gets locked at 9. If I hear a sound from your room after that, there will be consequences you won't recover from. Monica said nothing. Her cheek throbbed, blood dripped from her finger onto the marble. Her eyes stayed on the floor. Behind Catherine, Ruth stood frozen in the kitchen doorway, hands pressed to her mouth, tears sliding down her face. Not from Monica, but because she remembered the night the same thing had happened to her. The same slap, the same threat, the same deadbolt sliding shut. Ruth had lived that night on a loop for 13 months. Diane had heard the slap from upstairs and locked herself in the linen closet, back pressed against the shelves, knees pulled to her chest. She sat there for 40 minutes, counting the threads in the carpet, whispering to herself that everything would be fine. The same words she whispered every time Catherine's voice rose, worn down until they meant nothing anymore. That night, Monica heard the deadbolt slide at exactly 9 o'clock. She sat on the edge of her cot in the dark, the welt on her cheek pulsing with her heartbeat, her cut fingers stinging every time she flexed it. She pressed her palm flat against the cold wall. Somewhere above her, Catherine was sipping champagne in a silk robe, reviewing the guest list for her birthday. Somewhere in Greenwich, a woman named Grace Williams was missing. And somewhere between those two facts sat the story that would end Catherine Prescott's life as she knew it. But the camera in Monica's collar was still recording. It had caught everything. The slap, the threat, the phone crushed underfoot, the terror on Ruth's face, the blood on the marble. Every frame stored on a chip the size of a fingernail. Catherine thought she'd broken Monica. She thought fear would keep her quiet. She was wrong. 3 days later, Catherine decided private punishment wasn't enough. She'd been thinking about Monica ever since the study incident, not because she believed a maid could understand what was in that folder. The thought never crossed her mind. What aided her was something else entirely. The fact that a black woman had walked into her private space uninvited, breathing the same air as her leather-bound first editions and her Tiffany desk lamp. It disgusted her on a level she couldn't quite name, as if a stain had appeared on something sacred, and the only way to remove it was to press harder on whoever had caused it. The morning after the slap, Catherine called Monica into the dining room without looking up from her phone. "You'll clean all 6 guest bathrooms today. On your knees, no mop, no gloves. I want the grout white by noon." "Yes, ma'am." "And Monica," Catherine finally looked up, her eyes flat and empty. "If I see you standing before I give you permission, you'll wish you hadn't." Monica spent the next 4 hours on her knees. The cleaning solution burned the cut on her finger. Her knees ached against the cold tile, but she scrubbed every bathroom until the grout looked new. When she finished, Catherine walked through each one without a word, until she found a single water spot on a mirror in the 4th bathroom and made her redo all 6. Then Catherine invited her circle over. They arrived Thursday afternoon, 4 white women dripping in casual wealth, bracelets worth more than cars, handbags worth more than apartments. They settled into the sunroom with Prosecco and imported cheese, chatting about their summer homes as though everyone owned 3. Catherine waited until the second bottle was open, then rang the service bell. Monica appeared in the doorway, uniform pressed, hands clasped, eyes down. "Come here," Catherine said, not to her, to her friends. "Ladies, this is the one I told you about. Wandered into my study like she owned the place." The women exchanged glances. One hid a smile behind her wineglass. "Tell them what you were doing in there," Catherine said. "Dusting, ma'am." "Dusting?" Catherine repeated it like a punchline. She was dusting. The women laughed. Catherine's smile disappeared. "On your knees." Monica knelt on the marble, the stone cold through the thin fabric of her uniform. "Now stay there," Catherine said. "Stay right there while we finish lunch. I want my friends to see what happens to help that forgets its place." 20 minutes passed, 30. The women ate and talked, glancing at Monica the way someone glances at a stain on the carpet. Mild annoyance, nothing more. Then Catherine stood, walked to the table, picked up a full glass of red wine, and crossed the room to where Monica knelt. "You know, I've been thinking," she said, holding the glass above Monica's head. "You still don't understand where you belong." She tipped the glass. Wine poured over Monica's hair, down her forehead, across her cheeks, soaking into her white uniform and turning it red, pooling on the marble beneath her knees. "There," Catherine said. "Now you match the floor." One of the women pulled out her phone and snapped a photo. Another gasped, but did nothing. A third looked away and sipped her Prosecco. No one said stop. No one said a word. 5 women in a room worth more than most people's houses, and not one of them opened her mouth to say that pouring wine over a person's head was wrong. The woman with the photo held up her screen so the others could see. The wine caught mid-splash, Monica's eyes closed, the white uniform turning crimson. It looked like a painting of something terrible. "Send that to me," Catherine said. "I want it for Saturday." The photo was airdropped without hesitation. Catherine saved it to the same folder where she kept photos of her gala decorations. Monica's humiliation filed neatly between the ice sculpture and the flower arrangements. Just another detail for the party. Ruth had been watching from behind the kitchen door, biting down on her fist hard enough to leave marks. She wanted to scream, to run in and throw something. But 13 months had taught her exactly what screaming earned in this house. Locked doors, skipped meals, a visit from Catherine's driver. Monica knelt in the wine, hands resting on her thighs, face completely still. No tears, no flinch. She'd covered wars. She'd been detained at border crossings, threatened by cartel lawyers, screamed at by politicians on camera. A woman pouring wine on her head was not the worst thing she'd ever endured. Not even close. But it would be the last. That night, alone in her locked room, Monica wiped the wine from her face with a damp towel and wrung it out in the sink, the water running red. She sat on her cot and stared at the ceiling. 58 days. 2 more, and the story would be airtight. Every receipt, every name, every dollar, every bruise. 2 days later, Catherine made her announcement. Over brunch this time. Eggs Benedict on bone china, fresh squeezed juice, linen napkins monogrammed with her initials. The birthday gala was 6 days out. 200 guests from Manhattan's most powerful families. A live string quartet flown in from Vienna. A custom 5-tier cake from a Paris patisserie that charged more for its fondant flowers than most people earn in a month. "And one more thing," Catherine said. "I'm inviting Monica." The table went quiet for exactly 1 second, then erupted. "You're joking." "I'm absolutely not joking. I want her at the front door in her uniform, taking coats, carrying shoes, and every single guest will walk past her and see exactly what she is." "Catherine, that's deliciously cruel." "It gets better." Catherine pulled up a photo on her phone, Monica holding the stained kitchen rag from the week before, and held it up for the table. "I told her this was her gala dress." The women howled with laughter. Catherine typed a message and sent the photo to the group chat of all 200 guests. The caption read, "Special entertainment for Saturday night. Don't miss it." Replies flooded in within minutes, laughing emojis, clapping hands. One guest wrote, "This is why I never miss your parties, Catherine." Another replied, "Can we throw things at her too?" A third sent a gif of a dog in a costume walking on its hind legs. 200 people, and not one of them typed the word no. Catherine's phone buzzed and buzzed on the table, and with every notification, her smile grew wider. She was building an audience for a public execution, and every guest had just bought a ticket. Monica was in the kitchen when it happened. She heard the laughter through the walls. She heard Catherine's voice climb with excitement as the replies rolled in. She heard one of the women suggest, "You should make her dance." Monica dried her hands, folded the towel neatly over the oven handle, and went down to her basement room. She sat on the cot in the dark. The deadbolt was already locked. The bare bulb flickered once, then held. She reached under her mattress and pulled out a small folded piece of paper she'd kept there since day one. A contingency, an extraction signal. She'd hoped to stay longer, to gather more names, to trace the network deeper. But Catherine had just sent her photo to 200 people with the word entertainment attached. The window was closing. She unfolded the paper and wrote 2 words beneath the pre-printed code. "It's time." She folded it again and slid it into her uniform pocket, a pocket Catherine had never once checked, considering it beneath her notice. The next morning, Catherine left for the salon, hair and nails before the gala. While she was gone, Monica passed the note to Ruth, who tucked it into a grocery bag for the delivery driver. The driver carried it to a mailbox on Lexington Avenue, where a man in a gray coat was already waiting. He opened the envelope, read the 2 words, and made one phone call. The machinery Catherine Prescott could never have imagined began to turn. The gala Saturday night, the Prescott mansion blazed with light, every window glowing. A string quartet played Vivaldi on the terrace. Valets lined the circular driveway. 200 guests arrived in black cars and evening gowns, stepping into a foyer filled with white roses and towers of champagne. Catherine Prescott stood at the center of it all, in a black Valentino gown, a diamond choker catching the light with every turn of her head. She greeted every guest by name, accepted every compliment, radiant and untouchable. And she kept glancing at the front door. Monica hadn't appeared yet. Catherine had expected her at the entrance in uniform, head bowed, holding a silver tray for coats. That was the plan. That was the entertainment. That was supposed to be the moment 200 people watched Catherine Prescott show them exactly what she could do to someone she considered beneath her. But Monica was nowhere. "Where is she?" Catherine hissed at Harold. Harold shrugged. "Maybe she left." "She can't have left. Her door was locked." 30 minutes passed, then an hour. Catherine's irritation curdled into anger. The party was in full swing, but the centerpiece of her cruelty was missing. She excused herself and marched toward the service entrance. Then she heard it, a low rumble, growing louder, the sound of heavy engines rolling up the private drive. Guests on the terrace turned their heads. The quartet stopped playing. The valets stepped back as 5 black SUVs rolled through the open gate in tight, deliberate formation. The first carried a press placard on the dash. The second and third had tinted windows and federal plates. The fourth had a satellite uplink mounted on the roof. The fifth carried flashing blue and red lights, muted but unmistakable. Catherine walked to the front steps, her smile gone. Harold followed close behind, already reaching for his phone. 200 guests crowded the doorway and terrace, craning their necks, whispering. The champagne in their hands suddenly felt inappropriate, though no one set a glass down.
The first SUV stopped, engine idling for 3 seconds, then 4. The silence stretched until it became its own kind of sound. The rear door opened. Monica stepped out. She was unrecognizable. Gone was the stained uniform. Gone was the bowed head. Gone was the woman who'd said, "Yes, ma'am," 60 times a day. Monica Adams stood on the driveway in a floor-length white gown hand-embroidered with 10,000 crystals that caught the light like scattered stars. A $2 million diamond tiara, loaned by the paper's parent company for exactly this moment, sat on her head. Her makeup was flawless, her posture straight, her eyes clear and steady, fixed directly on Catherine Prescott. She looked like a queen arriving at her own coronation. In a way, she was. The driveway went silent. 200 people stood with their mouths open, champagne going flat in their hands. A woman near the railing dropped her clutch. A man in a tuxedo whispered to his wife, "That's not the maid." His wife didn't answer. She couldn't. Catherine's glass slipped from her fingers and shattered on the marble steps, crystals scattering like dropped diamonds. She didn't notice. Her eyes were locked on Monica. For the first time in her life, Catherine Prescott had no idea what she was looking at. A man in a charcoal suit stepped out of the second vehicle, Thomas Reed, editor-in-chief of the country's most powerful newspaper. He walked to Monica's side and turned to face the crowd. "Good evening," he said, his voice carrying across the silent terrace. "My name is Thomas Reed. I'm the editor-in-chief of the National Herald. The woman standing beside me is not your maid. Her name is Monica Adams. She is our deputy editor-in-chief and a 2-time Pulitzer Prize-winning investigative journalist." The crowd didn't move, didn't breathe. For the past 2 months, Ms. Adams has been embedded in this household as part of a federal investigation into a domestic labor trafficking network operating among Manhattan's elite families. The evidence she gathered, video, audio, financial records, witness testimony, has been submitted to the FBI. Arrest warrants have been issued. He paused, looking at Catherine. "Mrs. Prescott, the warrant is for you."
Two FBI agents stepped out of the third vehicle and climbed the marble steps, past the champagne tower and the white roses and the quartet's empty chairs. Catherine backed away, her face white, her mouth open with no sound coming out. "Catherine Prescott," one agent said, "you are under arrest for human trafficking, labor exploitation, tax fraud, and conspiracy. You have the right to remain silent." The handcuffs clicked shut around her wrists. 200 of her closest friends watched from the steps of her own mansion, at her own 50th birthday party. The diamond choker still sparkled at her throat. The Valentino gown still swept the marble. But none of it mattered anymore. It never had. It had all been costume, and the performance was over. Catherine screamed. Not a dignified protest, but a raw animal sound that tore through the night and silenced even the whispers. "This is a lie!" She twisted against the cuffs. "I'm Catherine Prescott! You can't do this to me! Do you know who I am?" The agent holding her arm didn't respond, guiding her down the steps with the same practiced calm he'd used on dozens of suspects before her. Catherine's diamond choker caught the flashing blue light off the federal vehicle, sparkling obscenely against the backdrop of her own arrest. "Harold!" she screamed over her shoulder. "Harold, tell them this is a mistake!" Harold Prescott stood at the top of the steps, his face gray, hands in his pockets. He watched his wife get led away in handcuffs, and he did what he'd done for 15 years whenever something inconvenient happened. He looked away. He turned and walked back into the house without a word, his footsteps echoing on the marble. Two guests stepped aside to let him pass. Neither looked at him. A waiter holding a tray of hors d'oeuvres stood frozen against the wall, unsure whether to keep serving or run. Monica stood at the base of the driveway with Thomas Reed beside her. The camera crew from the fourth vehicle had already set up, the satellite dish transmitting. Catherine was loaded into the back of the federal SUV. Through the window, her mascara ran in dark streaks down her face, the black Valentino gown bunched awkwardly against the seat. She pressed her forehead to the glass and stared at Monica. For the first time in 2 months, the two women looked at each other without pretense. No uniform, no orders, no "yes, ma'am." Just two women, separated by a pane of glass and the gap between who Catherine thought she was and who she'd actually turned out to be. They had never been equals. Monica had always been above her. Catherine simply hadn't known it. And now, handcuffed in the back of a federal vehicle at her own birthday party, she was beginning to understand. The SUV pulled away. The gate closed behind it. The taillights vanished down the tree-lined drive. The quartet's instruments sat abandoned on the terrace. No one picked them up. No one played another note that night. On the terrace, 200 guests stood in stunned silence. Some had their phones out recording, others just stared. A woman in a green gown set down her glass and walked to her car without saying goodbye. Then another. Then another. Within 20 minutes, half the party had left. Freedom inside, Ruth and Diane stood in the kitchen doorway, watching it all through the window. Ruth's hands were shaking. Diane was crying. Not from fear this time, but from something she hadn't felt in so long she barely recognized it. Relief. Monica walked through the front door, still in the white gown, the tiara, the diamonds. Her heels clicked against the same marble floor she'd scrubbed on her hands and knees 3 days earlier. She passed the champagne tower and the white roses, the abandoned plates of filet mignon no one had had the appetite to finish. She walked through the dining room where Catherine had made her kneel and into the kitchen. Ruth saw her and stepped back. "I don't understand. Who are you?" Monica took her trembling hands. "My name is Monica Adams. I'm a journalist. I came here to find out what was happening to you. And it's over now. You're safe." Ruth collapsed against her shoulder. 53 years old, a year without her daughter's voice, and now a stranger in a white gown was telling her she was free. She sobbed until her legs gave out, and Monica held her up. Diane stood 3 feet away, arms wrapped around herself, eyes wide and glassy. Monica looked at her. "Diane, it's over. No one is locking your door tonight." Diane's lip trembled, then she broke, crossing the distance in 2 steps to bury her face in Monica's other shoulder. The 3 women stood together in Catherine Prescott's kitchen, holding each other, while the party built to humiliate one of them crumbled to dust around them. Aftermath. The story broke 3 days later, in prime time. Every major network carried it. The headline ran across screens nationwide. "Manhattan socialite arrested for running domestic trafficking ring." At the center of it was Monica's investigation. 2 months of footage, hundreds of hours of audio, financial records tracing payments from 12 wealthy families into Catherine Prescott's private accounts. The spreadsheet with 40 names, the red X's, the word "disposed" written in Catherine's own hand next to the name of a woman missing for 14 months. The public reaction was immediate and explosive. Within 24 hours, a hashtag for justice for the 40 women was trending nationwide. Vigils formed outside the Prescott mansion. Protesters lined the sidewalk with photos of the missing. News vans camped on the street for weeks. The FBI's investigation widened. What had started with a single household became a network spanning 3 states. The 12 families listed in Catherine's spreadsheet were raided simultaneously on a Wednesday morning. In Greenwich, agents found a woman locked in a basement who hadn't seen daylight in 8 months. In the Hamptons, they found 3 women sharing a single mattress in an unheated garage. In Westchester, they found forged immigration papers and a ledger matching Catherine's system exactly. 15 people were arrested in the first wave. By month's end, the count had risen to 23. Lawyers, accountants, and staffing agency managers who'd facilitated the placements were charged as co-conspirators. Catherine Prescott's trial began 4 months later. She arrived in an orange jumpsuit, hair pulled back, no makeup, no jewelry. The woman who'd once poured wine over a black woman's head now sat behind a table with a public defender. Her private attorney had dropped the case the day the story broke. The prosecution called 31 witnesses, women who'd been sold, beaten, worked 18-hour days without pay, without phones, without any way to leave. One testified that Catherine had told her, "If you run, I'll call immigration. If you talk, I'll say you stole from me. Either way, you lose." Ruth took the stand on day 9. Quietly, hands folded in her lap, she described the night Catherine confiscated her phone. "She told me my family didn't need to hear from me anymore. She said I belonged to her now. And for 13 months, I believed her." Diane testified on day 12, describing the linen closet where she hid during the screaming, the lock on her door, the night she tried to leave and found Catherine's driver blocking the service exit with a baseball bat. Catherine's defense tried everything: entrapment, journalistic overreach, a Fourth Amendment challenge to recordings made inside a private home. The judge dismissed every motion. The evidence was overwhelming. The recordings legal under federal wiretap exceptions for trafficking investigations. And the 40 names on that spreadsheet weren't abstractions. They were real women with real families, bought and sold like furniture. The jury deliberated 6 hours. 6 hours for 15 years of crimes. 6 hours for 40 lives stolen and cataloged in neat columns. Guilty on every count. Human trafficking, labor exploitation, tax fraud, conspiracy, witness intimidation. Catherine showed no emotion when the verdict was read. She sat perfectly still in her orange jumpsuit, hands folded on the table, staring straight ahead. The same posture Monica had held for 2 months. Head down, hands still, silent. The difference was that Monica had chosen it. Catherine had had it forced on her. The judge sentenced Catherine Prescott to 22 years in federal prison, with no parole eligibility for 15. He also ordered the forfeiture of the Prescott mansion, all associated bank accounts, and Catherine's personal assets, totaling $38 million. Harold Prescott was charged separately. His lawyer tried to paint him as a passive bystander, a man who simply lived in the house and signed whatever his wife put in front of him. The prosecution dismantled that defense in under an hour, playing recordings of Harold negotiating placement fees on the phone, showing checks in his own handwriting, presenting emails in which he referred to the women as units and discussed replacement costs when one ran away. The passive bystander had been an active participant all along. He pleaded guilty to conspiracy and tax fraud in exchange for testimony against 3 of the other families and received 8 years. The courtroom erupted when the sentence was read. Outside, hundreds of supporters cheered, cameras flashing. Monica stood on the courthouse steps beside Thomas Reed and read a prepared statement. 40 women were bought and sold in this city. They were hidden in plain sight, in homes that hosted charity galas and holiday parties. They served champagne to people who knew exactly what was happening and chose to look the other way. Today, a jury said silence is not innocence. Today, a jury said, enough. The clip was viewed 60 million times in its first week. Survivors of labor exploitation shared their own stories in the comments. Domestic workers too afraid to speak up began calling the hotline the paper published alongside the article. Within a month, over 300 new reports had come in. Congress took notice. Within 3 months, a domestic workers' protection bill, informally dubbed the Monica Adams Act, was introduced on the Senate floor. It required transparent employment contracts for all domestic workers, mandatory wage documentation, criminal penalties for passport confiscation, and a federal abuse reporting hotline. It passed with bipartisan support and was signed into law before year's end. The 40 women were connected with legal advocates, immigration attorneys, and trauma counselors. A private fund set up by the paper's parent company provided housing and job training. Within a year, 36 of the 40 had been reunited with their families. The footage of Catherine's arrest at her own birthday party became the most shared clip of the year, shown in law schools, journalism programs, and human rights seminars around the world. It became shorthand for a simple idea. The people you look down on might be the ones looking right back at you. 1 year later. A year later, Monica Adams sat in a corner office on the 32nd floor of the National Herald's headquarters, a nameplate on the door reading Editor-in-Chief. The Pulitzer Committee had awarded her a 3rd prize, this time for investigative reporting in the public interest. The citation read, "For extraordinary courage and sustained undercover reporting that exposed a domestic labor trafficking network, leading to 23 federal convictions and landmark legislation protecting vulnerable workers." She kept the citation in a drawer. On her desk, she kept something else. A photograph of Ruth standing outside a small apartment building in Queens, phone pressed to her ear, laughing. It was the first photo Ruth had sent her after reuniting with her daughter. On the back, Ruth had written 2 words, "Thank you." Monica looked at that photo every morning before opening her laptop. The newsroom she now led had grown. She'd built a new investigative unit dedicated entirely to labor exploitation and modern slavery, hiring 12 reporters, 6 of them women of color, who'd never been given a shot at a major publication before. She trained them the way she wished someone had trained her, with patience, with rigor, with the belief that the most important stories are the ones powerful people don't want told. Diane had enrolled in community college in the Bronx, studying social work.
She texted Monica that she wanted to help other women the way Monica had helped her, adding a single heart emoji. Ruth opened a small tailoring shop in Flatbush, altering suits, hemming dresses, sewing buttons back onto neighborhood coats. On the wall behind her register hung a framed newspaper clipping, "The Maid Who Brought Down Manhattan's Elite." Beneath it, a handwritten note. "She held my hands and told me I was safe." Catherine Prescott sat in a federal correctional facility in Danbury, Connecticut. Her cell measured 8 by 10 feet. No Italian marble, no crystal chandeliers, no orchids on Mondays and Thursdays. She wore the same khaki uniform every day, ate in a cafeteria where no one knew her name and no one cared who she used to be. The judge had ordered 200 hours of community service to be served after her release, specifically at a shelter for trafficking survivors.
Harold Prescott's name was stripped from 3 charity boards, 2 museum wings, and a university scholarship fund. The Prescott mansion was seized by the federal government and converted into transitional housing for trafficking survivors. The sign outside read, "Fontaine House, a place to begin again." Monica had suggested the name. On the anniversary of Catherine's arrest, Monica was invited to speak at the United Nations. She stood at the podium in a simple black dress, no tiara, no diamonds. She didn't need them. She told the assembly about Ruth's tailoring shop. She told them about Diane's first semester. She told them about the woman from Greenwich who hadn't seen daylight in 8 months and now worked as a receptionist at a dental office, calling her mother every Sunday. Then she said something the audience would remember long after they left the hall. Catherine Prescott had a Valentino gown and a diamond choker. She had 200 guests and a 5-tier cake from Paris. She had everything a person could want. And she used all of it to crush people she thought couldn't fight back. Monica paused, looking at the front row, a delegate from Ghana, a human rights lawyer from Brazil, a survivor from the Philippines. But here's what Catherine never understood. The people she pushed down didn't stay down. They bent. And when they straightened back up, they carried the whole truth with them. She gripped the edges of the podium, her voice dropping lower. Ruth went 13 months without hearing her daughter's voice. Diane hid in a linen closet every time a door slammed. Grace Williams disappeared off a spreadsheet, and no one asked where she went. These aren't statistics. These are people, and they deserved better than what this world gave them. The audience rose to its feet. Monica stepped off the stage and checked her phone. A message from Ruth, a photo of a dress she'd just finished sewing, purple silk with white embroidery. Monica smiled and typed back, "Beautiful. Save one for me." If someone had ever treated you as though you were beneath them, what would you want the world to know about who you really are? Leave your answer in the comments.